can tell, we're having a few challenges with the audio hookups here. You know, I'm doing double duty today. That's one of the benefits of being in a volunteer organization. You get to do a lot more. Did you all enjoy that little chat with Rita Jo Lewis? That actually took a lot of prep work, because it's as Luke in the back will tell you, you don't normally get a senior political appointee who's willing to sit and just chat with you like that. And there's a trust level that's been built. And we developed a lot of credibility with the Ex-Im Bank by helping them get over their funding and reauthorization hump. And so we were able to do that. And I hope you enjoyed it. I think it's far more effective than somebody who does a keynote address and then they drone on and everybody's on Facebook and not paying attention. So you all have a full impression on her, and we'll have her back. What we're going to do is talk about India here, and we've got some challenges. So just bear with us here when we work on this. Stacey, I just want to check and make sure can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, and we can hear you, so good to go. I think we're operating through my cell phone, so if we run out of battery power, that's the end of it. Sikland-Standley, the chap on the screen there, is a prominent member of the NADEC, and we are actually very fortunate to have Kimberly Daniels, the chair of the NADEC, right here in the front. So she's going to be cheering you on, Stacey. So you all need to know that Stacey recently retired as the joint managing director of his own firm, Sikland-Standley PVT Limited, and they were distributors for a whole series of specialty lubricants and chemicals in India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bhutan. And Stacey is continuing to do consulting work for business opportunities in both India and Nepal. And I've had the pleasure of working with Stacey on a couple of other programs we've done for the National TAC regarding India. One of the most interesting things about Stacey are actually two of them. The first one is that this gentleman has had a number of decades of experience as an American doing business in India. So he brings with us some great hairs experience. And the other interesting thing about Stacey that has nothing to do with our program here, but I love to tell the story, is you're looking at the former mayor of Aspen, Colorado. And so Stacey doesn't know this, but because he's not here personally, I'm going to extract from him as a penalty. So just as a warning to the rest of you, you're supposed to get speakers here. So as a penalty, if any of you need any kind of connections in Aspen, you need some free lift tickets or something, just give me a shout and Stacey will work it out for you. And it has nothing to do with exporting, other than exporting funds. So that's Stacey. The other gentleman with me is one of our American whiz kids. What generation are you?
I can't keep track anymore.
This is Samir Kapadia. And did I pronounce that correctly?
You did.
Okay. And you need to know that Samir is a chief operating officer, and he's a principal of the Vogel group based here in DC. And he's a founder of the India Index, which is a business-to-business supply chain connection. And one of the things that I have an ugly reputation for is trying to create a program that does something for you. Because I don't like going to programs that it doesn't do anything. So some of you have been to, maybe all of you have been to programs where we're talking about doing business in a country, and they'll go through the challenges and opportunities and so forth. And you can get that. We've done a number of them for the National TAC, and Stacey has been a real anchor for many of those programs. But in talking with Stacey and Samir today, what we wanted to do is something really different, so that when you went out those doors, you had something that you could take away that was kind of an unusual tip or takeaway that you wouldn't get anywhere else. And so that's our goal for this program, is to give you something really unusual to take out. Now, before we get to the interesting pieces to take out the door, we want to talk about something that's also is very interesting, and that is the whole situation, the way India sits in the current war in Ukraine. And the reason we want to talk about this right up front is we don't want any of you going out of here and saying, well, you know, India's position is ambiguous, and therefore I don't want to even consider doing business in India. Because I will tell you that those of you that have bits and pieces of your supply chains that are still hooked into China are carrying way too much risk. And part of my business is involves risk management. And the way to cut that risk is to look at other markets. And India is certainly a market that we need to look at, but there are some risks there. So let me start with you, Stacey. And I really want to ask your views. Let's talk to us for a moment here about where and why does India sit in the current Ukraine war?
Well, India has taken a position of caution neutrality. And there have been several U.S. diplomats that have recently traveled to India, including Anthony Blinken. And they've tried to address this issue politically with Modi, the Prime Minister. And the situation is that India has got a very strong dependency upon Russia for import of defense materials and oil, although their oil dependency is actually greater from the United States, which many people don't realize. They've instituted a new initiative to indigenize their defense manufacturing, and they have listed over 300 technologies they now want to make in-country, which will reduce their dependence on anybody, including India. And that in itself becomes a unique opportunity for American companies.
Okay, and Samir, we may have a...
That's Prime Minister Modi calling.
That is. He's got a new program. He's just been talking to Rita Jo Lewis. Okay. And so I want you to hear from Samir on this, kind of this big picture topic of India's situation involving the Ukraine war, because I think it's really something in the short term, right?
Yeah, I would agree. And just by way of background, you know, I spent the past 12 years doing U.S.-India policy. I worked at a think tank here in Washington, worked at a think tank in Mumbai, writing for the Wall Street Journal. And for the past 9 years, I've been advising U.S. companies on market entry to India, and Indian companies market access to the United States. And it's been fantastic to kind of see the arc of how this has really evolved. I was quoted in the New York Times just last week about this India-Ukraine issue. And what's really sticking in the minds of many folks is that India is now caught in this geopolitical catch-22, because coming out of the pandemic, they are now the fastest growing economy in the world, 8.5%. The Economist just did some huge story on them. And they're essentially in first place. And what they feel is that the West is asking them, saying, I want you to go buy oil in the public markets. I want you to go buy coal in the public markets, when at an all-time where commodities are skyrocketing in price. Whereas India is getting a sweetheart deal from Russia at 30%, and in some cases 40% below spot prices. So India is saying to themselves, why would I subjugate myself to purchasing commodities at a higher price when I'm getting a massive discount here? And then now Russia, because of all the sanctions on Russia, Russia's now a tremendous export market for us for medical supplies, groceries, food supplies. So India's finding themselves in this really amazing position with Russia. Not only are they getting cheap commodities, they're selling a lot of goods, and that's keeping them in first place. And don't forget, India also has this stigma around being told what to do. In 1947, when they became independent, they came out of this, legacy of British colonialism. And when I was in India during the actual invasion of Ukraine, I was there when it happened a few months ago. And I asked some of my colleagues and friends, I said, well, what's your perspective on this? And they told me something I'll never forget. They said, this is Joe Biden's war. And I didn't quite understand that. And this is what they thought. They said, under the previous administration, there was a kind of retreat from NATO to say, maybe we shouldn't fund NATO as much, maybe we shouldn't lean into NATO as much, and we should really look internally about how we should manage our own costs with some of these multilateral groups. Whereas when President Biden came into office, he said, let's double down. Let's expand NATO, let's fund it more, and let's go recruit. And so in India's mind, they look at this as a kind of pseudo-British colonialism, an interventionist policy in Europe, to say now they're out recruiting in Ukraine, and they are now creating this rift. Now, I don't have a stance on it one way or the other, but it's interesting when you take a step back to look at these perspectives around the world, because they can very much frame positions, which is why, to the expense of the United States government, India is not kowtowing or acquiescing to any of our positions around sanctions or limiting purchases of oil and coal. In fact, some statistics suggest that India is importing oil at 8 times more than they usually do, and in coal, 20 times more than they usually do from Russia. So that's really worrisome in the temporal circumstance. Because remember, now that we have this Indo-Pacific strategic shift from a U.S. perspective, we need India, we want to partner with India from a defense perspective on from a variety of different rationale. And to that end, it's very unlikely that the U.S. will impose sanctions on India. But very tenuous, very tender relationship right now.
So last word on this Ukraine situation goes to you, Stacey, because we're going to move on with our program. We wanted to address this up front with all of you. And I think the perspective that Stacey and Samir are giving you really very unusual and very interesting. So Stacey, last word.
Well, the last word was when President Biden and Prime Minister Modi had a call last week. It focused on clean energy, technology, health, food security, military cooperation, and Indo-Pacific issues. When they have the Quad meeting next week, the U.S. government is going to launch a new economic, Asia-based initiative specifically focused on small and medium-sized enterprises doing business with the United States and regional economies in South Pacific, including India.
Okay. So let's move from this big picture now to the real practical side of things, and this getting into the takeaways that we want to have. Is there a question in the back, or can you?
Yeah, I just want to question regarding what we just talked about. So maybe my question to you is, besides the reasons we're talking about, do you see the national security, Indian national security as a reason, or what stance India is taking?
Do I see the national security in India doing what? Sorry, say it again.
Do you see the stance that India is taking about Russia and Ukraine?
Yeah.
Do you see that Indian national security as one of the reasons?
Okay, so let me repeat the question. Sure. The question is, do you see the stance that India is taking as bearing upon India's own national security? And the subtext of what you're saying, what is your name, by the way?
My name is Vogel. I'm with the CDEC, California. Yeah.
Welcome. It's from my region. Is that the Galwan Valley subtext? Are you raising the Galwan Valley subtext?
Just
right? Okay. So Stacey, you heard me repeat the question?
Yeah.
Okay, 2-sentence answer because we're going to move on. Short.
Well, of course, India is concerned about their security because of the Road and Bridge Initiative with China, which goes right across their border, all the way from the east in Myanmar through Pakistan and onward toward the border with Iraq. They are preoccupied with defending that area and stopping any aggression from China. So obviously, military security is very critical to them.
2 quick points. India's long held this belief that if China ever invades, Russia will bail them out. I think that's a false notion. And then second, I think India's motivations are economic, not political.
Okay, I agree. Now, let's move on to the practical part of this program, having taken care of this. By the way, thank you for that question. That was right on point. This issue that we want to address now has to do with a real challenge that U.S. firms, particularly the small businesses, that they really have in getting underway in the business community in India. And so, Stacey, you know, what's a takeaway or a tactic that small businesses can use? They don't have the money necessarily, or they don't want to go and spend several months in India setting up, meeting people, recruiting distributors. Maybe they don't even want to use the U.S. Commercial Service Gold Key exercise. It's too expensive for them. It's too inconvenient. What do you do?
Well, there's three interesting points of contact that an SME, a small medium enterprise here in the U.S., can initiate to do business in India. And if you put it in the context of the India culture, India still operates on the idea of arranged marriages. You look at the Sunday newspaper in Delhi, and you'll see page after page of matrimonial ads. Therefore, the way that a small, medium company in America can connect with India is by looking for a marriage maker, thinking back to Fiddler on the Roof, if you will. And the way you can do that very effectively is look to your own regional local India Chamber of Commerce. I did a quick search of these in preparation for our meeting today, and there are about 20 of them in the United States, and they're in all the major metro areas. So that's one great source. Connect with the local Chamber of Commerce, because they're the people that are Indians that have a network back in the country, and they will introduce you to the cousin brother or the business person that has an interest similar to yours. Second opportunity, again in America, is through the Indus Entrepreneurs, which is called TIE, T-I-E. There are 26 TIE chapters in the United States. People think of them as being high-tech because they were founded in Silicon Valley, but they're not. Their specific stated goal is to mentor and support business relationships between India and the United States, and they will take on any type of project that they're interested in. The final takeaway is taking advantage of the U.S. Commercial Service in India. Make a contact with the local hire, the Indian that works in the commercial service, because he's the one that has the knowledge, the connections, and the networking, not the high-ranking commercial counselor. He gets his information fed to him by the local hire. So, India Chambers of Commerce in the U.S., TIE, and the Indian hire in the U.S. Commercial Consulates in India. That's the way you set up your network cost effectively and identify opportunities before you ever hit the ground running in Delhi or Bombay or Bangalore.
So, Stacey, let's take an example. Let's suppose that you know, I'm not. Pretend that I'm based there in Las Vegas during the cool times of the year only. And let's pretend that I want to start some kind of connections in India. And what you're talking about is building the personal, person-to-person network. How do I get started in Las Vegas? So what you're saying is use one of the local business associations. Is there one in Las Vegas as an example?
There's absolutely. We have a very robust, large Indian NRI community here.
Okay. So let's suppose I do that. Why is that connection in the U.S. really valuable? Is there an incentive for the Indian American, if I will, can you use that term, to really make the marriage brokering work well?
I think there is. I think that again, I'm married to an Indian, so I have a cultural bias, but I also have 40 years of experience with this cultural bias. Indians are, at their heart, are entrepreneurs. And they love to connect businesses because no matter who, they may be a doctor, but if you want to sell software in India, they will know somebody, and they will know that there's going to be a payoff for them if they make a successful connection for you. So their motive is still financial, but it's also a great pride of country. Indians are very proud people. And that's one of the points that Samir made earlier. They didn't like kowtowing to the British for 250 years. And they still are very proud and want to take their own initiative and show that they can deliver.
So Samir, on this whole notion of the personal context, can you add anything to this, or
Well,
a different color to it?
Well, I'll speak personally. I mean, I was born in India. I'm getting married in October. It's not an arranged marriage, but but I do wholeheartedly agree with Stacey's sentiment that there needs to be, and there has to be, just a personal connection with working with Indian companies. Always having someone as an intermediary introduce you goes a really long way. There is an element of transactional qualities in Indian business, but it's one of those places where you gotta know somebody. So I think the personal connection through the platforms that Stacey mentioned are incredibly valuable.
And have you done this yourself?
So let's see. So I represent quite a number of large companies, everyone from Exxon to Walt Disney to a long list of companies, and what they're doing in India and vice versa. And usually when I advise them about market entry, or if they have a land acquisition challenge, or they have some workforce challenge, the best route is to go through these larger trade associations, as Stacey mentioned. There's a group called FICCI, F-I-C-C-I, which is very, very helpful. There's also a CII, which is another one. These institutions serve as almost like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce of India, and they can serve as really wonderful platforms to get connectivity on a policy issue or a market entry issue that you just can't understand or can't know. I think also the U.S.-India Business Council is a fantastic local organization. It's currently led by Ambassador Atul Keshav. Atul Keshav was the former Charge d'Affaires of the U.S. to India, literally just left that post and is now assumed the head of USIBC. They have a really wonderful ethos at USIBC, which is about curating B2B relationships in a real way, in a real room. And I think people, particularly post-pandemic, appreciate that connectivity.
Stacey, anything further on this building the personal connection here in the U.S.?
No, I think we've covered it in a focused way that people can take advantage of it.
Okay, is this clear to all of you? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What does FICCI stand for and CII stand for?
So, pardon my lack of breaking down the acronym.
The question was, what does the acronym stand for, Stacey? So.
Yeah, and I can't sum it. Federation of Indian Companies, and it's a long name, but they're like basically the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in India. So if you just type in FICCI India Chamber, boom, you'll find it. But I appreciate that question. I gotta go do some homework after this. We'll come back.
And the second one that Samir mentioned was CII, which is the Confederation of Indian Industries. And they maintain offices in Washington, D.C.
Okay, so all of you know from your experience as members, we are very well acquainted with the U.S. Commercial Service, the USIACs in our country, using that hookup. Stacey and Samir have just underscored something that I see way too many companies, businesses, entrepreneurs in our country, they just ignore the local contacts here in the United States, the business associations. And in fact, if you're involved in the defense industry at all, they typically ignore the military attaches at the various embassies or consulates. And I'm from Hawaii, and in Hawaii we have liaisons to the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, and our defense industry folks typically ignore them. And this is the same concept that Stacey and Samir are trying to get across to you. Don't ignore the local contacts that you've got right in your own neighborhood. Use them first, because you can, if you hit a good one, you're done. You got it. Because the personal relationship and the person doing the introduction is really powerful in that culture. So, okay, so that's one big unusual takeaway to leave the room with. The second one we want to get into, and one of the things that's happened over the last helped me with this now a couple of years, is that Samir and his organization have built an incredible digital access to India by way of a website. And so what we're going to do here is something unusual. We're going to actually do, can I call it a beta test?
Sure.
Is that right? Okay. And you're ready to go public with this thing, right?
Well, we're going to be launching in the next couple of weeks, but we did something special for DEC today to get you all access and membership, and it should be interesting.
So here's the thing. We're going to go on this website on the screen here. And then I want Samir to kind of teach you and walk you through this. And then what I've negotiated with him, see, I'm always negotiating here. The negotiations that I had with that chair, XM, we could do it. We could build a course around that one, but be that as it may. So what Samir's agreed to do is he's going to give you all a special passcode so that you can play with this website, not only while we're talking about it here in the room, assuming we've got enough bandwidth now on it, and the hotel assures me that it's not going to turn out all the lights for me. But also, it's good for what, a couple of days here, so that
We're going to, for 30 days.
okay. And after the 30 days is up, you have to pay. Okay. But so before we do this, to show them this, what's the basic concept behind
Yes.
this? So that I have you focus on Samir rather than on a website for a moment.
Yeah, so it's interesting. What have we seen over the past 4 years? We've seen the advent of tariff policy. And that tariff policy has created a lot of challenges for importers, particularly from China. We had an initial $500 billion worth of goods from China being subject to nearly 25% tariff. That moderated to about $350 billion worth of goods, but still a real calamitous moment for companies, small, medium, and large, whether you're Whirlpool, or you're Apple, or you're Exxon, or you're a small coffee distributor. This really affected your business model. And the government had this process of, well, do you want an exemption on tariffs? Fill out these forms and hopefully we'll give them to you. And not many of those even got through the door. So we saw this kind of retreat from China, or at least an attempt to retreat from China into Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines, a variety of other countries, depending on what industry you're in. India saw a big sort of spike in the jewelry industry because India is quite good at manufacturing jewelry. So a lot of affordable jewelry came out of China into India, and so on. So we kind of took a look at this at our firm and said, there's something really unique happening here. And you're finding this huge sort of capital outflow out of China, but where will it land? And we created this platform about a year ago, and it's gone through a variety of different formats, to provide a platform where US companies can log in and get access to Indian suppliers with just a few clicks. So you type in the HTS code in which you're importing, or you type in the keyword or the product group, and immediately you'll see who are all the top suppliers in India for those products, their contact information, their email, their address, their names, etc. Almost like a matchmaking. And to come back to Stacey's point, almost like a dating or an arranged marriage sort of platform. So for US companies, they found this incredibly valuable. So say you're Williams-Sonoma and you have 20,000 SKUs from candlesticks to tablecloths, and everyone's subject to a 25% tariff. You log into India Index, say tablecloths, who's the best supplier? And all the names pop up. And you might say, how do we get those names? Well, we went to the Indian government and we collected 10 years of customs data. And we said, what are the top companies that are exporting more of a certain good, or getting really good reviews, or have proper certifications, what have you? And we created a confidence rating and said, we're super confident about these guys, less confident about these guys, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how we kind of address the US importer market. And I'll talk about why it's important for exporters as well. On the supply side, on the India side, you might ask, well, why would an Indian supplier join this network for their needs? Well, they see this as a lead generation tool for them. It's business development, because essentially it's tariff arbitrage. If you find a US importer that's paying $1.25 for a good, and they usually sell it at $1.25, so their margin is gone, now they can import from India at a buck or maybe 90 cents, maintain their margin, and bypass the tariff. So Indian companies now have the opportunity to have a very captive demand market in the U.S. and say, wow, I know all of these U.S. companies really need to find an alternative supplier. And if I type in what products I can export, we immediately got all the list from the United States Trade Representative of every U.S. company that applied for tariff relief. So we know who's in trouble. So we made that little market, kind of got around the chicken and the egg problem. And the whole goal, and this I mean wholeheartedly, is, India is a fantastic future partner. And
Closer to that.
Fantastic future and current partner of the United States. But how can we digitize that? How can we expedite that and bypass some of the usual channels where it's a lot of shaking hands, a lot of meetings, a lot of cold calls, a lot of emails? That just takes so long. What this hopes to do is to make that expedient, make it decisive, and hopefully generate in lowering your overall costs and making a new partner. So even if you're not importing from India, say you're exporting to India, this platform will also allow you to find people that are in those industries to strike those relationships with just a few clicks. And that's something that's new. A lot of folks haven't been focusing on these businesses. And I'll leave you with this last note. The past 15 years are about social networks. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You're sharing photos, you're chatting, you're commenting, you're tweeting about social networks. The next 20 years will be about market networks. How can industries and geographies and companies and product groups interact for digital commerce? So that's what we're trying to do with US and India.
So what we'll do now is two things. We're going to go to the website on the screen. Stacey will still be able to participate audio-wise. You just won't see his picture here. And then what we want to do is get to the website, and then those of you who have an interest, Samir's going to disclose the password and kind of help you see if you can get on your respective devices that you have with you. If you want to, just follow on the screen. So this is the rollout beta test of this. So
we couldn't be happier to do this with such a great group, and once again, this is really meant to be a resource for everyone in the room. So the website's indiaindex.com, and you'll see the positioning is really around sourcing from India, but at the same rate, if you're exporting to India, you'll find this as a very valuable resource to meet companies in real time.
you can change that first page of the website so when your deck members get there, they don't.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and let me just go through a few of these.
Before you do that, let's make sure everybody can get, who wants to get on, give them the password.
Yes, so it might be a little tricky on mobile, but we can of course try. When you get to indiaindex.com, you're going to see a kind of sign up button. And when you click the sign up button, it will ask you for your name, your email, your company's name, how many employees you have, etc. And it'll say enter a coupon code. The coupon code that we provided for everyone is just capital NADEC. So if you use that code, you'll get immediate access to the platform for 30 days. I even think we extended it for 60 days. And we hope that you can use this to go and explore and see and hope you can find some companies that you can do some business with. I will give it a caveat. We are in beta testing, so if you have some issues, please email me and we can work through them. But that's the genesis of this kind of model. Once you kind of log in and you sign up and you have to do a confirmation, and please use that code whenever you get time, and even if something you're doing now, fantastic. But you'll get to this screen where, and we're going to just extend the screen a little bit.
So Stacey can follow you. Where are you now?
So this is on the, once you log in, this is on the Explore Suppliers page, where you'll find a number of different search tools to find a company that you might want to work with. So in this case, we're exporting. Consider this just saying explore Indian companies, and we very well might change that to make it more agnostic. So you can refine your search by keyword. You can search for individual company. You can look at individual confidence ratings. For those that are in trade, HDS codes are something that are routinely used, especially when you're working with customs and border CBP folks. Product category, there's a number of different categories here that you can go through to see who might be, a viable supplier across all these sort of larger product groups. And then business structures, some people want to work with large public companies, some want to work with smaller ones, and you kind of can, get in more narrow as to what kind of company you might be looking for. So let's just, do a test here. If I could ask an audience, an industry that you're in or a product set that you're interested in.
Okay, we got a volunteer here.
Maybe like frozen shrimp.
Frozen shrimp.
Okay.
Okay, now you want to export frozen shrimp to India? Or you import? Import first, okay.
Okay.
That's another conference, by the way. That's down in
It's NADEC, NADEC is the coupon that you'll add there, and you have to create your own password, and it might give you like a confirm your email and all that jazz. But the coupon is NADEC, and that should get you for free for 60 days.
So before you go with this, the frozen shrimp exercise, I want to see us show of hands. How many of you are on your mobile devices in the room here are successfully on? Okay.
Just to be clear, with that coupon, we still have to do all the password stuff.
Yeah, and that's only meant to make sure that you can get long-term access outside of this room when you leave.
Okay, but clearly some of you are already on with us here on the mobile side, so good for you to know.
Great.
Okay, so the example, importing, he wants to bring in frozen shrimp from India. Go to it.
So I just typed in shrimp, and immediately you see a number of companies that are listed here with some confidence ratings.
What is the confidence rating now? That's all.
So that's these stars right here on the right. And then sometimes you'll see like, pharmaceutical products. That just means they might also be in that industry. Indian companies are interesting. Some are very large conglomerates and they're in a variety of different spaces. So that might be the umbrella product category for their company. But you can see product name, what some of the products that they're selling. So this is a company that sells fish products, frozen prawns, shrimps. You scroll down here, frozen shrimps, shrimp paste, frozen cooked shrimp. So let's take this one. This sounds pretty good.
It's
Debbie Seafoods Limited, frozen cooked shrimp. This is the HTS code that they provided, 197000101.
Is that the HTTPS code you want?
Not just
And then you can see some of their descriptions. They do preparations of meat, of fish, or crustaceans, what have you. So let's click on Debbie Seafoods, and immediately you see, okay, the company is located in Sikland-Standley, in India. They're a large-scale manufacturer exporter. They're a public limited company, and this is the managing director, Mr. Ramanandam, and this is the other managing director, probably a family-owned entity. And they provided a general email here, which in case you want to directly contact them on this platform, you would just say request contact information if that's too broad for you, and then we'll send you the actual phone number and email of the principal company. And then let's look at the company's website and see who they are. Okay, so this is the company. An unbroken food chain from Debbie Seafoods, how we do it, processing and export. Here we go. Debbie Seafoods is a leading exporter of shrimp from India. So you see how in a matter of seconds, you cut through the noise, you find the supplier you want, you find the relationship that you want, and then you can call them and start doing business. And under the current construct, you're beholden to connectors, middlemen, government, trade associations. And that's all great, right? But technology has accelerated so quickly, and these market networks are becoming so prevalent that every American company that wants to do business with India should be empowered to do so, without waiting for someone's phone call or without waiting for an email to be responded to.
You know what, Samir, what I really like about this is, it's not that I'm going to buy frozen shrimp. But the concept is, you know, after dinner, you can go into your library or study or living room or whatever and fool around with this and come up with 2 or 3 different options, and then go watch the nightly news or do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Question over here.
Yeah, so 3 stars, my translation of 3 stars is neutral,
Yeah.
not positive or negative, which means there's still a need to do further research.
Correct.
No matter what would that mechanism be?
So there's 2 ways to look at it. One is, you know, the platform is really meant to do matchmaking. You know, think of Uber, right? Uber will find you a driver, but you know, if your driver takes too long or he gets lost, you can't sue Uber, right? You can't blame them for that. But you can give them a negative rating and say they were terrible. I'm never going with that person again. 1 star. So there's a mechanism within the platform that, say, after you've worked with them or not worked with them or they're unresponsive, for you to provide feedback so that we can adjust that confidence rating over time. And we don't only want to limit it to the users. I think it's equally as important to have companies themselves championing what they're doing. And so certifications, you know, if a company just got a certain acknowledgement or they're exporting over a certain volume and they want to show that they're more aggressive in being an exporter from India or a partner, then that will also increase their score.
Just as a follow-up to that, can you do the search and refine it by 5-star or 4-star?
Yes, absolutely. So let's do this over again. We'll go shrimp. Okay, there we go. Just populating now. We can just go refine selection by, let's say we only want to see 5-star suppliers. Now there's no 5-star suppliers of shrimp. So I'm really sorry about that, folks. but that's not to say that there could be 3-star suppliers of shrimp, and there's some 3 stars. So the point is, I think 5 stars is really aspirational, folks. It's not. I think any company's going to find a hard time becoming a 5-star supplier. There's just so many different things. But where I think it is valuable is if someone's at a 1-star, maybe don't dedicate your team or dedicate your time to spending a lot of focus on a 1-star, because you know they just might not have their complete act together. They might have got the paperwork together. They might not have done deals in the past. They might just not be that credible or established. The star system is really meant to do one thing: save you time, because you can't boil the ocean. Nobody wants to do that. So that's the whole purpose there.
And why under product categories it's saying pharmaceutical products?
Yeah, and this is
That's
so.
just part of the data.
It's just part of the data, and here's why. When we collected the data from the Indian government, and it was a pain in the butt, we got 100,000 Indian companies on this database, and they're all tagged in very unique and interesting ways. And what's likely happening there is this company has some other wholly owned subsidiary or parent company that focuses on pharmaceutical, and it's just grabbing that. So over the next few weeks and months, we certainly plan to kind of clean that up. But for now, we're confident that, particularly under the product name category, that you're getting something super, super accurate.
So hold the question just for a second here. We're out of time for this program, and so let me just ask you: can we do the reverse? If I'm an exporter of chocolate-covered macadamia nuts, and I'm
exactly. So who would you sell to? Let's just say that. Who would be a purchaser of your goods in India? Any examples?
How about a brewery?
Sorry.
A brewery.
Brewery. Okay. So what would you be selling? Selling beer?
Nitrogen generator.
Hydrogen generators. So
Nitrogen.
Okay. So you're selling nitrogen to a brewery in India.
Right.
Is that it? Okay.
Generator.
Yeah. A generator. So let's see. Well, let's just type in beer. Who manufactures beer? Oh, no data found. Let's try alcohol. Okay, we're getting into some organic chemical spaces here. Okay, how about this? Alcoholic beverages, portable alcohol. There are also sugars and confectionery. This is here. We got 3F Industries. They are beverages, spirits, and vinegar. Let's try this one. Okay, this is the company in Chennai. The merchant, manufacturer, exporter. We got some emails of the actual principals of the company. 3FG.data. Let's go to the company. 3F Industries. Okay, so this looks like a very large conglomerate from what I'm picking up here. All right. Yep, large company. Our businesses, bakery, pharma, personal care, commodities trading, oils, fats. So this is a tough one. This would need a little bit more of a deep dive. But
Samir?
but I'm confident we could find it if I had more time.
Stacey, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say, go ahead and do Mohan Meekan. They are a brewery in India.
Oh, okay. Let me see if they're in my.
Mohan, M-O-H-A-N.
Okay, Mohan.
Second word, Meekan, M-E-A-K-I-N.
Mohan. Well, let's try Mohan first and see if anything comes up.
Okay.
Mohan Muta Exports, Mohan Energy. Mohan, is that Mohan
Meekan is
Muta?
No, Meekan.
Mohican.
Meekan, M-E-K-I-N, Meekan. Or Kingfisher.
Yeah, she can be.
Indian beer.
Well, this is something that we'll definitely take a look at, but you know, search platforms are always very tricky. You've got to find the right name there. But this is one of those situations where on the platform, you would just say, request support, find me my person, and then we would go and our team in India and in the US would go and find you. And of course, we learn from that and then make it a little more accessible. But fully appreciate that suggestion.
So on the question, the Q&A thing, let's just do that so we can semi-end on time here for the next program. And then I'm sure Samir will hang over because I know you'll have a good question. And Stacey, we're going to sign off here. And Stacey and Samir, thank you. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you. We'd like to run this program another hour or so, but probably we don't have time for that. So if you have questions, you'll come on up and talk with Samir. And Stacey, we're going to sign off here. And thank you so much all the way from Las Vegas.
Thank you, everybody.